I caught my own son in my house with a woman I had never seen before. My son is married. His wife and child were visiting her parents that week. I had only gone to his place to surprise him, to check on him like any mother would. But instead of finding my son alone, I found a truth that stopped my breath. The house was quiet when I walked in. Too quiet. I heard laughter coming from his bedroom, not the kind you share with family. A woman's voice. Comfortable. Familiar. When I opened the door, my son froze. The woman beside him pulled the sheet up, eyes wide with panic. And in that single second, I understood everything. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a coincidence. My son, a married man, a father, was living a double life inside the same walls where his child had taken his first steps. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply asked one question that shook him more than any anger ever could. Does your wife know who sleeps in her bed when she's away? He couldn't look at me. And that silence told me more than any confession ever could. I closed the bedroom door behind me, not to protect them, but to protect myself from saying something I could never take back. My son stood there, shaking. The woman wouldn't even meet my eyes. I asked her to leave. Not loudly, not angrily, just a quiet, broken request from a mother who had already seen too much. When the door shut, it was just the two of us. I looked at the boy I raised, the child I stayed up for when he had fevers, the man I trusted to protect his family, and I asked him again, slowly this time, how long? He tried to explain. Loneliness, pressure, stress, the usual words men use when they want forgiveness without accountability. I stopped him. Your wife is raising your child while trusting you with her life, I said. And you're explaining betrayal like it's a bad habit. That's when he said something that broke me even deeper. She'll never find out, Mom. I felt my chest tighten. Not guilt. Not fear. Disappointment. Because in that moment, I realized my son wasn't scared of hurting his wife. He was only scared of being caught. I didn't threaten him. I didn't give ultimatums. I said just one thing before walking away. You have two choices. You tell her the truth, or you live the rest of your life knowing your mother knows exactly who you are. And as I left the house, I understood something painful and final. Sometimes, the hardest part of being a mother is accepting that love doesn't always create character. A few days later, everything looked normal again. My daughter-in-law returned home with the baby. Laughter came back into the house. From the outside, it looked like the storm had passed. One afternoon, I went to visit. My son wasn't home yet. He was at the office. His wife greeted me politely, then called him. Your mom is here, she said casually. Within minutes, my son left work and rushed home. The moment he walked in, I saw it on his face. Fear. Not the fear of losing his family. The fear of being exposed. I didn't wait for him to speak. I looked at him calmly and said, Don't be afraid. I didn't come here to destroy your home. He froze. I came to see my grandson, I continued softly. To hold him. To hear him laugh. Then I met his eyes. I won't ruin your marriage, I said. I won't tell your wife. His shoulders dropped in relief. But inside me, something stayed heavy. Because while I was choosing peace for my grandchild, I knew the truth was still sitting between us, quiet, dangerous, and waiting for the day it would demand to be heard. A few nights later, my son came to my house alone. No wife. No child. Just him. He sat across from me, rubbing his hands together the way he used to when he was a boy and didn't know how to ask for help. Mom, he said quietly, what should I do? I didn't answer. I can't leave my wife, he continued. She's the mother of my child. He swallowed. But I can't leave her either, he added, his voice cracking. I'm stuck between them. I felt something inside me break. Not loudly, but deeply. A mother is supposed to protect her child. But not at the cost of someone else's dignity. I looked at him and said calmly, I won't choose for you. He looked surprised. You don't get to love two women in secret and ask your mother to clean up the mess, I continued. You don't need a solution, you need courage. He leaned forward. So what do I do? I held his gaze. You tell the truth, I said. To one of them. Or to both. I paused. Anything else is not love, it's fear. He sat there silently, and I knew that whatever he chose next would decide not just his marriage, but the kind of man he would become. A few days passed without a word. Then one evening, my son came back to my house again. This time, his face looked different. Not confused, not defensive, tired, but decided. I ended it, he said quietly. I didn't react right away. With her, he added. The woman from the office. He told me how he met her, how it started small, conversations, lunches, complaints about work, how he convinced himself it wasn't dangerous because it didn't mean anything. And then it meant too much, he said. I listened without interrupting. I told her it was over, he continued, that I have a wife, a child, a family I won't destroy. His voice shook. She cried. She yelled. She said I was using her. I nodded slowly. Because you were, I said gently. Even if you didn't plan to. He looked down. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. Not from my wife. Not from you. I finally spoke. Ending it was the first right decision you've made in a long time, I told him. But it doesn't erase what you did. He nodded again. I know, he said. I just needed you to know. I chose my family. As he stood up to leave, I realized something painful but hopeful at the same time. Sometimes people don't change because they're afraid of consequences. They change when they finally understand the weight of the people they almost lost. And for the first time since I walked into that room, I saw my son trying, not to hide, but to be better. A few days later, my son called me late at night. His voice was low, uneasy. Mom, he said, she won't let it end. My heart sank. She keeps calling, he continued, texting, showing up near my office. I stayed quiet, letting him speak. She says if I try to cut all contact, she'll file a case against me, he said. Misuse of authority, emotional exploitation, false accusations. There was fear in his voice now. Real fear. I never promised her anything, he said quickly. I never hurt her, but she says she'll destroy me if I walk away. I closed my eyes. This was the part no one talks about. How wrong choices don't just disappear when you decide to be right. Did you save the messages? I asked calmly. Yes, he replied. All of them. Good, I said. Because fear grows when people stay silent. He exhaled slowly. I thought ending the affair would fix everything, he said. But it feels like it's just starting a new nightmare. I spoke carefully. You don't run from this, I told him. You face it honestly, legally, quietly. He hesitated. And my wife? He asked. She still doesn't know. I didn't answer right away, because now the truth wasn't just a moral issue. It was a ticking clock. And I knew one thing for certain. Secrets don't stay buried when fear gets involved. That night, my son finally did what he had been avoiding. He told his wife everything. Not halfway. Not softened. Everything. The affair. The woman from the office. The threats. The fear. At first, his wife didn't say a word. She just stood there, holding their child, listening as if her body had gone numb. Then her hands started shaking. So while I was trusting you, she said slowly, you were lying to my face. He tried to explain, tried to say it was over, tried to say he chose his family. But some truths arrived too late to sound sincere. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She went into the bedroom, packed a small bag, picked up their child, and walked toward the door. Please, my son said, his voice breaking. Give me a chance. She turned back once. I gave you my trust, she said. You broke it. And then she left. The door closed behind her with a quiet finality that felt louder than any argument. When my son called me afterward, his voice was hollow. She's gone, Mom, he whispered. I sat there in silence, holding the phone, because this was the cost of truth. Necessary, honest, and devastating. And I knew the hardest part was still ahead. I couldn't sleep that night. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I went to my daughter-in-law's house myself. She opened the door slowly, her eyes swollen, her child resting against her shoulder. She didn't invite me in, but she didn't shut the door either. I'm not here to defend my son, I said quietly. I'm here as a mother, and as a woman. She looked away. I know what he did is wrong, I continued. And no one has the right to ask you to forget that pain. Then I said the words I had been holding back. But this is still your home. This is still your family. And that woman from the office, she should not be the one who destroys it. She finally looked at me. I told her how people make mistakes, sometimes terrible ones, but families are built on what happens after the truth comes out. I pointed gently toward her child. Your child needs both of you, I said. Not perfection. Just honesty, stability, love. She started crying then, the quiet kind that comes when anger is too tired to fight anymore. I don't know if I can trust him again, she whispered. I know, I said. Trust takes time, but walking away makes that woman win, and she doesn't deserve that power over your life. We sat there for a long time. No accusations, no shouting, just two women thinking about a child's future. Before I left, she finally spoke. I'll come back, she said, but on my terms. That evening she returned home, not as someone who forgot, but as someone who chose to try again. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a small, fragile hope breathe back into our family. She came back home, but the house didn't feel full. My daughter-in-law moved around quietly, did everything she needed to do for the child, but she didn't speak to my son. Not a word. 2 days passed like that. Heavy, tense, unbearable. On the third morning, the doorbell rang. A courier. My son signed without thinking. 10 seconds later, his face went pale. Legal notice. That woman from his office had already filed a case. False allegations, harassment claims, everything written to destroy him completely. His hands started shaking. I told her I was ending it, he whispered. I told her clearly. His wife stood frozen in the doorway, reading the papers. So this is what she meant by not letting go, she said quietly. That silence between them finally broke, but not into anger, into fear. That night, no one slept. My son kept pacing the room, replaying every message, every call in his head. His wife didn't accuse him, but her eyes carried a question that hurt more than shouting ever could. Will this follow us forever? I sat them both down. This is exactly why affairs destroy more than hearts, I said. They bring strangers into your home, and those strangers don't care what they burn down. The next morning, we contacted a lawyer. And for the first time, my son truly understood something. Ending a mistake doesn't erase it. Sometimes you have to face consequences together, or lose everything apart. The real fight hadn't even started yet. The court hearing happened faster than we expected. Our lawyer warned us from the start. The case was framed carefully. Messages taken out of context. Screenshots without timelines. Words twisted just enough to look dangerous. On the very first day, we felt it. The judge listened, but his questions leaned in one direction. Toward her. When her lawyer spoke, he painted my son as a calculated man, powerful, manipulative, guilty before proven innocent. My son tried to explain, but the courtroom isn't a place for emotions. It's a place for paperwork and timing, and she had both. During the recess, our lawyer pulled us aside. I'll be honest, he said quietly. If nothing changes, the next hearing may not go in your favor. That sentence sat in my chest like a stone. My daughter-in-law gripped her child's hand tighter. My son stared at the floor, ashamed, scared. finally realizing that one wrong choice had put his entire family at risk. Outside the courtroom, reporters were already whispering, "Reputation doesn't wait for verdicts." That night, my son said something that broke me. "Mom, maybe I deserve this." I looked him straight in the eyes. "No," I said firmly. "You deserve consequences, not destruction. And we're not giving up yet." Because somewhere in this mess, there was still one thing stronger than lies. The truth. And the truth just needed the right moment to speak. There were 10 days left before the next hearing. 10 days before everything could collapse. If nothing changed, my son could lose years of his life behind bars, and whatever was left of his family would shatter quietly, permanently. The days didn't pass. They dragged. By the 7th day, the house felt heavy. Nobody laughed. Nobody slept properly. Even the walls seemed tense. On the 8th day, we all sat together at the dining table. Papers spread everywhere, phones buzzing with unanswered calls, lawyers' notes scribbled in panic. We were searching for a solution that didn't seem to exist. Suddenly, my son broke. He buried his face in his hands and started crying, not silently, but the kind of crying that comes when a person finally runs out of strength. "I ruined everything," he said through tears. "My marriage, my child's future. Your respect, Mom. There's nothing left to fix." He looked at me like a scared little boy again. "Mom, it's over. There's nothing we can do now." I reached for him immediately. I held his face in my hands and forced him to look at me. "No," I said calmly. "It's not over. People who give up lose. We're still standing." I reminded him of his child, of his responsibility, of the truth. "Fear doesn't decide your future," I told him. "Truth does." That night, nobody slept. My daughter-in-law sat awake beside her child, staring at the wall. My son paced the house like a ghost. And me. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling until morning. My eyes burned, my heart raced, but sleep wouldn't come. I replayed every conversation, every detail, every moment that could still save my son. By dawn, my body was exhausted, but my mind was clear. I knew one thing for certain. A lie this big always leaves fingerprints. And before the 9th day ended, I was going to find them. On the evening of the 8th day, the phone rang. My son looked at the screen and froze when he saw his lawyer's name. For a moment, he didn't even want to answer, as if bad news would become real the second he heard it. He picked up the call with shaking hands. I watched his face change. Confusion. Silence. Then disbelief. "What do you mean she withdrew the case?" he asked, almost whispering. A pause. Then his eyes slowly filled with tears. The lawyer's voice was calm but firm. "She signed the withdrawal today. No charges. No follow-up hearing. You can come tomorrow to collect the NOC. And yes, this happened because of your mother." The phone slipped from my son's hand. His wife stared at him, terrified. "Say it again," she said. "What did he say?" My son looked at her, voice breaking. "It's over," he said. "The case, it's gone." They didn't say another word. They grabbed their keys and drove straight to my house. When the door opened and I saw them standing there, my son didn't speak. He walked straight to me, wrapped his arms around me tightly, and broke down completely. He cried like a child who had been holding his breath for too long. "I thought I lost everything," he sobbed into my shoulder. "I thought my life was finished." His wife stood there stunned, tears streaming down her face. She stepped forward slowly and held my hand with both of hers. "You saved him," she said quietly. "You saved our family." I didn't answer right away. I just held my son and let him cry, because some lessons don't come from punishment. They come from someone who refuses to let you fall, even when you've made the worst mistake of your life. And that night, for the first time in days, the house finally felt like it could breathe again. After my son finally calmed down, he pulled back and looked at me. His eyes were red, swollen, full of questions. "Mom," he said softly, "how did you do this?" The case was strong. Everyone said it was against me. So how did it suddenly disappear? I took a deep breath. There was no pride in my voice. Only truth. I didn't fight her in court, I said. I went to her family. Both my son and his wife froze. I found out where she lived. I found her parents. And I went to their house, alone. My son shook his head in disbelief. Mom, why would they listen to you? Because I didn't go as an enemy, I replied. I went as a mother. I told them how I sat across from her parents and spoke calmly. I told them I didn't shout. I didn't threaten. I didn't beg. I told them the truth, I said. I told them that one mistake shouldn't destroy two families. That my son has a wife and a child. That if this case continued, his life would be ruined forever. My daughter-in-law covered her mouth, tears rolling down her face. I continued. I asked them one simple question. If this happened to your son tomorrow, would you want a chance for him? There was silence in the room. They went home and talked to their daughter, I said. They explained what consequences really look like. And the next day, she withdrew the case. My son dropped his head. I don't deserve this, he whispered. I lifted his face gently. This wasn't about what you deserve, I said. This was about saving a family, including ours. That night, my son didn't just thank me. He promised me something, that he would never again put his marriage, his child, or his mother in a place where silence had to save him.